The story introduces a woman with a character that is drawn to nature. She can be first seen by herself, seated on a high dry cliff. The contrast is her younger self standing on a different-looking cliff, this time with lush green grass in the valley of the river below. She narrates growing up in Ireland, comparing her childhood to the wheat in the hayfields. Her home was known for its cliffs and the sea. She was taught the notion that man is one with nature. They are one and the same. She loved hawthorns. It was her access to the earth and all of its natural beauty. It's not hard to think about a possibility of time erasing all the wild places of one's childhood memories, but the narrator assures this is not that sort of story. A man in a hat and garden boots calls out to the younger version of the narrator. He has to call out several times before she comes running to his side. Her name is Mary. They both stand in front of a white modest house, with potted plants and hedges all around. The environment is rich also, with lush green trees and wild bushes with colorful flowers. The man appears exasperated with the young child. He tells her he doesn't really care where she goes or what she does, but she needs to remember to stay out of the fairy fields. When he leaves with a bed of nurtured plants, Mary does exactly the opposite of what he's commanded. She hurries over in her red Wellingtons to the same fairy fields, taking care to change out of her Wellingtons and into some flat shoes when she gets there. She can hear tinkling and whispers. The field has a monument of tall rocks arranged to form a circle. Too bad for children who don't believe in fairies. Mary has seen them, and they're like twinkling stars floating through the wind. They tell her not to be afraid. They push further away from her, and she has a flashing vision of a desert and scorched earth. The vision has her crawling into herself, but her father is there to wake her up. He isn't cross that she's disobeyed his orders, but he reminds her they were orders regardless. She tells him about the sparkling lights she saw, and he attests he saw them too, when he was younger. He explains the earth is a living thing, just like humans. The circle of rocks they know was made by nature and humans hand in hand. Her father makes her understand the earth is slowly losing its life. As Mary grows older, she sees it for herself. The fairy fields have lost their magic, and youths have converted the place to a golf course, littering the place with golf balls. Mary can barely find serenity as she makes sketches in her sketchbook. There's always a group of people to ruin it with a golf ball or two. When Mary retires home, she pulls out an article with the woman she feels has the platform to build her aspirations. But to chase those dreams, she would have to leave her nature-induced home for the city of Dublin. She dyes her hair blonde, like she's wanted to do for a while. The idea of meeting her possible employer rattles her, and she begins to fidget. Maybe she's dyed her hair the wrong shade, she tells her friend, Eve, over the phone. She gets as far as the front door to the celebrity florist she plans to work for. Eve accentuates the importance of the job. Mary can't afford to chicken out. Mary rings the doorbell, once, twice. She's still on the call when the door is answered. Mary is so startled she drops her sketchbook. The young man who answers squats down simultaneously with Mary to pick it up. The sketchbook spilled open as it fell, and the man glances one of the sketches she's titled Flowering Hawthorn. He hands the book back to her, commenting positively on the sketch. Mary states her purpose. She's come looking for Shaw. He leads her in, and a woman stands as if for a proper greeting. Mary stretches out for a handshake, introducing herself as Mary Reynolds, a landscape designer. The woman, however, snubs her and throws both flattery and herself at the young man, whom she reveals is named Christy. Christy leaves the room, and Shaw decides now to acknowledge Mary with a comment about Christy being an attractive man for attractive women. Mary pushes her sketchbook forward, nervously wanting to put the interview on the right track. Shaw takes the sketchbook and flips through the designs. Her only comment is wanting to know if anyone else has seen Mary's designs. Mary's reply is no. Shaw closes the book dismissively, and Mary shyly admits her admiration for Shaw's career path. Shaw doesn't identify as a mere florist though. She calls herself a big deal when it comes to garden design. And yes, it's been busy enough for her to need an assistant. Mary can consider herself on a trial, and her first task is to keep her hair less shades of rainbow blonde. Mary begins work. Behind the scenes, she makes elaborate sketches of nature. She submits them to Shaw, who deals directly with the clients. Mary picks a residence on the outskirts of the city, but Eve doesn't see how the environment is suitable. It's miles away from civilization. Mary argues she can't cope with the city. She would rather be surrounded by nature, by hawthorn plants. Hawthorns, she educates Eve, symbolize hope. Mary gets to a level where she can go out for exquisite meals with her boss. Shaw mentions they'll work on a client's garden design together. The client's name is Madden, and she wants her garden to give off a powerful personality. Shaw even proposes they'll both have lunch with the client. Eve thinks it best to warn Mary about getting ripped off by her boss. Mary argues celebrities need a slow manner of approach. It may take time, but Shaw will eventually give her the acknowledgement she deserves. At a particular day at work, Shaw comes back from a trip and Mary inquires about her time there. It turns out Shaw has gotten a sponsor for her garden at the Chelsea Flower Show. She notices Mary looks different, and praises her new appearance. She then goes on to advise Mary a woman's beauty precedes wealth and power. Mary just wants a life around wildflowers. Shaw plans on taking Mary to the Chelsea Flower Show, as they are thinking of participating in the contest the year after. For Mary, it would be a chance to share her ideas concerning wildflowers with the world. The Chelsea Flower Show is known for its prestige. The day comes, and Mary accompanies Shaw, only to be held back by a guard. Shaw, on the other hand, is let through. Mary watches as she exchanges greetings with her sponsor, oblivious to her assistant. A sad Mary walks away from that section and finds solace in the display section. The place is riddled with colors, flowers in their number and in their best arrangements. Mary is moved to take several pictures. She runs into Christy, who isn't the slightest bit impressed. He feels it's all like in the name, a show. The participants and the audience don't really care for actual nature. They're only interested in a rather monotonous art of it, in his opinion. He tries to recall Mary's name, and she stutters it out to him. She asks why he's at the show, and he reveals he's a botanist. It's interesting, because she was under the impression of him being a rock violinist. He had the instrument with him when they first met, and the dress sense of a musician. He explains music feeds his interest in wildflowers, and Mary is mesmerized by the fact that he appreciates wildflowers like her. Mary starts to tell him about her work as a landscape designer, but Christy loses interest at the word designer. He has no interest in human involvement, just in the wildflowers themselves. Mary blurts out about designing and wildflowers going hand in hand like a marriage, and Christy laughs awkwardly, then starts to move away. Mary goes after him, blurting out an explanation to her marriage comment. But Christy ultimately and kindly dismisses her to go talk wildflowers with potential clients. A socially awkward and frustrated Mary is left standing by herself. Back at Dublin, a party holds in Shaw's residence. Christy is present, greeting guests. Mary is in a corner, watching the overwhelming scene. Shaw is with a client, who's flipping through Mary's sketchbook with much interest. Mary retires to her room, but she can still hear Eve's predictions becoming realization. Shaw is passing off Mary's ideas as her own. The client is so impressed that he wishes to show the designs to his agent. Mary breaks down in tears, but is interrupted by Christy wanting to know where the exit is. He notices something is amiss in Mary's demeanor, and asks if she's fine. She lies and he nonchalantly believes her, closing the door to take his leave. Shaw eventually leaves for Dublin and dumps Mary. She's made Mary's sketchbook and the ideas in it her own, and has no need for Mary anymore. Mary is left with no job, or a sketchbook full of ideas. At least she still has Eve, who encourages her to try harder. She can make more and better designs. Shaw stole a book, not her talent. Mary takes time to reflect among rocks and streaming water, nature in all of its glory. On a particular night while she sleeps, she has a dream of her younger self going through all the magical places she knows. When she wakes, she hears a whisper as if from a fairy. Chelsea Flower Show. By daylight, Mary is more energetic. She drafts out her acceptance speech for the gold medal she aspires to win at the show. She makes a call through asking to become a registered participant. The man in charge, Nigel Hogg, turns her down because she's not a registered garden center, and she sounds extremely young and inexperienced. Mary tries again another day. Nigel's secretary tells her Nigel isn't available. She has allergies, and Mary is in the middle of prescribing herbs from Wicklow when her landlord comes knocking hard, demanding she pays what she owes. Mary shamefully ends the call, but not without the secretary hearing more than necessary. The next time Mary makes a call through to the secretary, whose name is Marigold, there's a breakthrough. Mary was able to send the herbs needed for Marigold's mold allergy. To say thank you, Marigold agrees to send her an application form for the garden competition. The hiccup is that Mary will need to fill and submit the form by Monday, which is only 2 days away. The actual exhibition is months away though. Marigold gives her an insight into what the form entails. One huge requirement is a sponsor willing to donate £250,000 on Mary's behalf. If she's able to do all that, then Marigold will put her application in without Nigel noticing a thing. Eve and her partner come over to offer Mary moral support. Mary starts to create new designs, and her day to leave for London then Chelsea comes. Mary gets to meet Marigold at the office. She even brings more herbs to Marigold's delight. Nigel Hobbs steps out of his office to see what has Marigold so joyful. He doesn't even acknowledge Mary, as Marigold lies seamlessly about receiving herbal tea from her sister-in-law as a birthday gift. When he leaves, Mary hands in her application and Marigold wishes her the best. She comments on Mary being a breath of fresh air. The shy, fidgety Mary has been replaced with someone more fluent in her motives. When Mary leaves, Marigold goes through her application. She's chosen to deal on theme titled Celtic Sanctuary, as a reminder of the importance of wild nature. She draws inspiration from the fairy fields and its momentum stone moon gates. She calls it a portal between the unknown and the physical, a means to a time forgotten. She talks about connecting with wild nature through meditation and reflection. To do so though, one must find a magical place. Her application gets accepted. She has 80 days to prepare, and 3 weeks after to complete her garden. A celebration is at hand. Eve comes over to pop champagne. It's a big deal, as over 200 applications are sent in, but only 8 candidates are selected to compete. They can't celebrate too much though, as Mary still needs to find funds to build her garden. Eve advises her to connect with her clients. Mary reaches out to the so-called clients from when she worked for Shaw, but it's a hopeless end. None of them prove of help to her. Her garden design requires 500 wild species. Eve suggests nurseries, but Mary explains nurseries won't be a feasible solution. Hawthorns need to be at least 100 years old. She also needs to budget for transportation of the plants from Ireland to England. Finally, she'll need stonemasons to build in a farmhouse style. Eve asserts Mary just needs a starting point. Her friend's statement creates a light bulb moment. Mary knows some stonemasons. She can start from there. She finds the masons she'd previously met while trying to get her former client Madden as a sponsor. They're not just any masons, but farmers that can build walls in a farmhouse style. She proposes they build the same wall for her in London, in preparation for the exhibition. She starts to mention all the other stuff she'll need, but they cut her short. They'll only be of help after she takes consent from a man that has Enshuma. Enshuma is apparently the highest level of the soul. Mary asks where she can find this man, and she's given directions to Future Forests in West Cork. It's a 4-hour drive, and the only interest the man has is wildflowers. Mary smiles at the prospect of meeting someone that shares her passion. It's nighttime when Mary reaches her destination. She's in the process of peering through a door when Christy walks out of it. Fumes escape the room, causing Mary to faint. When she wakes, Christy is close and shirtless, and wanting to know what has brought her here. She unloads about needing his help, and wildflowers species from the Future Forests. She tells him about being a competitor in the Chelsea Flower Show, and he withdraws, stating he's not one for shows and exhibitions. If she still insists on needing the Green Angels' help, she'll need to ask them herself. Christy leads her to them. The Green Angels are currently in a meeting. Christy introduces Mary to the group, which in a session currently led by Christy's father. The group has a significant number of people, who all turn their attention as Christy explains Mary has come to talk about the Chelsea Flower Show. Mary steps up. The more she talks, the more confident and fluent she becomes. The stonemasons she met earlier are part of her audience. She starts with her career path as a garden designer. She's of the opinion that gardens don't mirror true nature. They're mostly too manicured and trimmed and proper, so they give a rather artificial feel. Gardens, and even city parks, have become like cosmetics, beautiful but not genuine. The feel of the natural wild from people's childhood is losing hold by the hour. Christy's father is intrigued enough to ask how the group can help Mary. Mary delves right into her proposal. Her garden design, Celtic Sanctuary, aims to make wild nature gardens fashionable in city parks and personal gardens. For that, she'll need a contractor that supports her vision. When she's done with her speech, the audience is sold. Christy ruins the moment with his pessimism. He's of the opinion the propaganda will be forgotten after a week or so. He feels the group should focus more on building water systems in Africa. Sean, his father, boils it down to the I Ching. The coins say yes to Mary. Christy still says no. Christy shows Mary the treehouse she'll spend the night in. He helps her up the rope ladder and into a small space lit with golden candlelights. He remains close to her garden idea. Mary senses a great deal of hypocrisy. Christy explains the rock star life is all a pseudo he puts up with for the sake of money. She also needs to know the stonemasons she requires are booked until September. Mary insists her idea comes with good intentions. Christy asks if part of these intentions include fame. When Mary asks why he would assume such, he unapologetically states he knows people that have done the same. He, however, will be her guide the following day through the wild. The next day comes, and Sean inaugurates a water closet system that has been built in the wild. It's called the Future Forests Memory Toilet, and with a flush, it's set for business. It's a celebratory meeting, and a photographer wants to capture memories. He calls out to Mary and Christy to say cheese. Christy holds her close for the photo, that's ready in seconds for her souvenir. Christy then takes her hand and beckons her to follow. It's like a meet and greet with so many wildflowers and plants. Mary asks where they've all come from. Christy explains most of them are picked from construction sites and replanted. Haven houses about 200 healthy hawthorns. He leads her all the way to a verdant hilltop, surrounded by lush wild plants and colorful flowers, overlooking a small piece of blue lake nestled among the surrounding hills. At some point, he takes a dive in the lake, and maybe Mary feels confident the water has washed away his pessimism, because she brings up her aspirations again, which she's sure her garden design will achieve, if she's given the chance. Christy remains strong-headed and closed-minded. He insists the show is a platform for the pretentious, rich, and famous. Mary has had enough. She calls out his closed-mindedness and inability to see they could change the way people think, not just about gardens, but about his Oasis project. After her outburst, she furiously brushes past him. Sean, the I Ching master, who is more receptive of Mary's plans, goes ahead to help her draft. He's willing to offer her a number of plants and flowers. Stone walls too. Mary will need to consult Christy for the construction. They'll have to estimate the cost of equipment and transportation at a later time, but it promises to be a substantial amount. While they plan and draft, Christy is behind them, not offering much of an input. Later that night, Christy packs his things to leave for Ethiopia. Mary pleads for him to stay, as she needs his help. He counters and asks her to come with him to Ethiopia. He's going to meet with a Japanese writer who is sponsoring his forest park. 60 days to the event, and Mary is back to her small apartment in the middle of nowhere. She doesn't have much in place, except for the acceptance speech she stuck to her refrigerator door. She steps out, as if in a fit of hopelessness, and stares at the hawthorn tree in her yard. She can hear the tinkling and whispers of the fairy from within the leaves. She asks them to make Christy come back to help her. She has the photo they took in a box she puts at the foot of the tree. She's left fate in nature's hands. Mary takes to a radio broadcast to draw in sponsors. At least the host is impressed with what she potentially brings to the table. She has the sketch of Mary's Celtic sanctuary, and Mary's passionate input about creating atmospheres and showing that people can have true nature in their very own backyards. The host makes it known that the whole nation should be ashamed if they can't help Mary. There's a little progress. Mary has the hawthorns and wildflowers she needs from future forests. The hiccup is the Green Angels not having permission to work without Christy's consent. Mary tells Eve she has to find a way to convince him. She will go to Ethiopia. Eve stares at her, wide-eyed and shocked. She thinks it's insane, Mary going to Ethiopia to apply pressure. Mary's excuse is that Christy shares the same passion for wild nature as herself. He just has to see that her aspirations will help wild nature. Eve takes that Mary is hopelessly in love with Christy. With 40 days to prepare, Mary goes to Ethiopia. One of the locals is nice enough to lead her all the way to Christy's house. Christy is surprised to see she's come, and offers to show her around. It's a fight against desertification using irrigation. Water is redirected from the river to the farm, and the seedlings are later to be replanted on the hillsides. The goal is to take the project forest park across Africa. Christy shows Mary a vast area of desert that once held wild nature. The project is already blooming. Christy is proud about the other benefits the newly nurtured trees are providing, including medicine and protection against erosion. The project still requires millions of new trees. By nightfall, Christy believes he's shown Mary why the work in Ethiopia is more important than her flower gardens in Chelsea. Mary level-headedly insists both projects are important. Hers will get a demographic of people to care about wild nature in the first place. It's incredulous how Christy can't see that. The next day, Christy buys Mary a shawl and takes her to church. At some point they watch from the sidelines, observing the locals from a height. Mary's take is that Christy's project needs atmosphere. It shouldn't be just above survival. If Christy wants the awareness and sentiments of outsiders, then he'll need to create an atmosphere of celebration. Mary sketches something Christy takes to the mayor and his cabinet. The mayor, speaking in Amharic, expresses admiration for Mary's work and subtly hints at his perception of Mary's feelings for Christy. Mary eagerly asks Christy for a translation, prompting Christy to offer a benign explanation that conceals the true nature of the conversation. The mayor and his cabinet laugh heartily at her oblivion. Before Mary knows it, she has joined the community to be part of the Forest Park project. Mary finds Christy showcasing a dress to a beautiful Ethiopian woman. The dress is made out of the same fabric she was admiring earlier. This upsets Mary. Christy notices her mood change while they're back at work. She walks away as if for a break, and Christy approaches her, grazing his fingers against her thighs. She frustratedly pulls away. He inquires why she came to Ethiopia, as if her purpose hasn't already been established. He hints at a different reason other than the Chelsea show, but Mary isn't in the mood to identify as one of the girls. He lets her go without another word. Later at night, Mary questions why Christy used her design. Christy answers he believed the design would be of value to the people. Mary needs to know if he believed in her for the sake of the people, or if he truly sees her potential. She gives him her ultimatum to come with her to Chelsea, to show her how much he actually values her input. He turns her down, asserting that the environment Chelsea offers is just not for him. Mary is once again abandoned with her frustrations. Devastated, she takes out the Ethiopian-inspired design from her sketchbook and throws it into the bonfire. She doesn't leave Ethiopia though. She stays and keeps assisting the community materialize her design for them. On a particular day, she trips and sustains an injury. Christy attends to her wounds, and Mary asks why he's still being nice to her. Christy claims it's naturally who he is. The design is finally ready, and with that comes a pending celebration. Mary finds the dress she assumed was for another woman. Christy had noticed her admiring the fabric from the first day and made a dress for her with it. During the dancing, singing, and clapping, Christy beckons Mary over and holds her close before leading her away from the celebration. Nighttime gives them privacy to be even closer, and after they've laid together, Christy expresses his motive to show her his vision for Africa. The next day, he takes her to a high cliff he calls the Cradle of Mankind. They share a kiss, and she hears the fairs whisper a confirmation. She sees it in a flash, how vegetation will come back to the bare cliffs and mountains of Ethiopia. She howls in excitement, and tells Christy she has to return to her calling. She came to Africa to prove herself to him, and now it's Christy's turn to prove himself to her. Mary returns back to base. When she speaks with Eve on the phone, she still has no Christy or sponsorship. There are only 10 days of preparations left, but Mary promises something happened in Ethiopia that makes her no longer afraid. While on the phone, she goes through some of her mails. One in particular makes her drop the phone in astonishment. She got the sponsorship. Barbara Murphy listened to the radio interview and decided to donate the £250,000 Mary needs. Barbara wants the Celtic sanctuary to be dismantled after its exhibition at the show and be rebuilt at the Dublin hospital to comfort terminally ill patients. Now Mary has the hawthorns and wildflowers, a donation to cover transportation. but she still needs a builder. Christy makes his arrival back from Ethiopia known by announcing he'll be Mary's constructor. Mary is excited to see him, and he beckons on her to come join him to see something. Christy thinks it wise to transport the sheep pastures on baking trays. Mary notices everything has been prepared beforehand, like Christy was sure she would get the sponsorship. He concurs that he knew she would. A major problem now is the 500 wild species they'll need to somehow bloom in Chelsea in just 3 weeks. Mary recites her fairy confirmation. What her faith prevails has already happened. It's all the solution she needs. They are now attempting to build the Celtic sanctuary in just 21 days. Christy gets the crew accommodation at his aunt's retirement home, as it's the cheapest place they'll be able to afford. He plans to share a room with Mary, who has new rules in place. He'll sleep on the sofa, as his only focus will be the project at hand. Slowly, the project starts to take shape, to Nigel's disgust and horror. He and a constructor come over to try and bully Mary's team into a disqualification. He argues her project isn't following safety procedures, and the walls will need steel reinforcement. Mary helplessly asks her team if they can do what Nigel wants. The stonemasons ignore the threats. Eve spots Shaw talking to Nigel, but Mary refuses to let that have an effect on her. The truck of wild flowers arrives, but the flowers are all withered. Sean assures them they're not gone for good, and just need some water to spring back up. Christy goes to get the hose and runs into Shaw, who inquires for a few wildflowers for her rose bed designs. She negotiates if Christy gives them to her, then she'll ask her fiancé to donate to Christy's Oasis project tenfold, should he desire. The proposal hunts him for a while. 5 days to preparation, and heads clash. Christy's father argues Mary can't do the project strictly her way. She has to be able to obey basic gardening rules. Christy steps in to support Mary, and Christy's father gets frustrated, calling the whole project a disaster that won't work. The flowers spring back to life as hoped for, and they're quickly replanted. The hawthorns keep Mary in suspense. She shares her speculations with Christy concerning their survival. She imagines them blooming just in time for the assessment. But Christy feels only time and luck will tell. Prince Charles walks in on Mary's garden, thinking it's his own garden. He compliments Mary's garden, calling it a harmony with nature. Mary corrects and redirects His Royal Highness, but she remains delighted he would confuse his garden for hers in the first place. Christy meets up with Shaw and her fiancé for lunch and to talk about his partnership with Shaw on her rose bed design. In return for Christy's collaboration, he'll get Shaw's fiancé's monetary support. Christy isn't expecting Shaw to pull out Mary's sketchbook and pass it off as hers. She shows him the rose bedding design upon his request. It's unclear if Christy chose to follow through with the negotiation. 32 hours to the jury's assessment. The crew are having a feast. Mary toasts to all the hard work and helping hands. On the Royal Horticultural Society preview day, Mary is woken up by heat and runs out to check on the hawthorns. To her delight, they've bloomed. Mary's garden starts to attract a lot of people. Individuals are reminded of childhood places just by looking at her garden. She becomes a mini star, even signing an autograph. 10 hours to go. Mary is pouring chlorine into the water as instructed. This will keep bacteria at bay. She turns on the mister and bubbles erupt. She got it wrong. She was supposed to put just 2 corks of disinfectant, not 2 entire bottles. Mary faces potential disqualification. But John, the construction supervisor, joins hands with her and Christy to pump out the bad water and clean the bubbles off the competitor's garden leaves. With that done, she's handed a file that recognizes her as a competitor in the exhibition. Christy confesses his love for Mary and her wild garden. She pushes him to go meet the Green Angels while she looks after the garden. He leaves, forgetting his violin. Mary notices and goes after him with it. While the garden is unattended to, Shaw steps into its threshold. The air is heavy with anticipation about what she plans to do. She takes a look at the garden and flips to the original sketch. Maybe seemingly defeated, she drops the sketchbook where Mary will find it and leaves. Mary comes back to the comfort of her garden and her lost sketchbook. She falls asleep there and has to be woken up by one the judge is ready to assess. Competitors can't be present during the assessment. Mary goes home to Christy. While her fate is being decided by the judges, she finds a different kind of comfort from Christy's lips and arms. The broadcast is worldwide, announcing Mary as the winner of the gold medal for her garden design. Even the community back in Ethiopia watches to celebrate. Mary is welcomed by a crowd of adoring fans and friends as she goes to the podium to accept her medal. Her proud parents watch her acceptance speech from the comfort of their home. It's the same speech she drafted out in the beginning. There's an elite party after the competition, which Mary reveals to Christy she specially made a dress for. When they get to the entrance though, they're not let through. Christy tries to explain Mary is the gold medal winner. It must be why she didn't get or need tickets in the first place. Christy's explanation falls on deaf ears, and Mary, already embarrassed, asks that they leave. They go back to Mary's garden, where she breaks down crying. Christy assures they can't reject her forever. A time will come they'll have to come to her. Things only go uphill from there for Mary.